Well, I suppose the only other job here to do is to clean up the yard a bit. And that will entail bringing in the train into the center track. Now this train has the cars that we pulled from Wooster during the last round. And ideally this would be a completely separate train if I had a separate staging yard. But since this is all I have, this will work okay. It also keeps the number of cars to a constant. And what this train will do is it'll pull in the clear here and stop. And it can be worked from both ends of the yard or just one end. I'm going to try to work it from both ends at the same time to see how tricky that gets. All I'm going to do is separate the cars that are bound for the Gerstenschlager Industries from the other non-Gertie industry cars. So basically it's the hicubes, and in this case it's just the hicubes. While these two Jeeps creep around here. I'll just pull these hicubes out. Actually, I'll pull the two covered hoppers and the tank car out and put them adjacent to these other three cars. And when I block the Gertie cars, I try to keep the 4-door hicubes and the 8-door hicubes together. If for anything else, organization. The 4-door hicubes, like these two here, or three here, are for the G1 industry. And I say the 8-door hicubes are for the G3 industry because it's a shorter track and it's a different customer. The 4-door hicubes tend to be what Ford Motor Company likes, while the 8-door cars are what GM prefers. It's a nice thing about DCC. If I notice I'm running out of room here, can just dial up a locomotive and shove that down while these cars flawlessly track through all the turnouts. Let's quickly move that out of the way. So here we have those 3 cars on that track, and we will replace the 4-door high cubes back on the inside track. While this Jeep continues to move its cars around. So we'll stop work over there, pay attention to what we're doing over here. Line up these couplers, about 5 ties in between. This is already in the clear spot because this is a non-girty car. We will add it to the other cars that we're making up. I suppose this Gilbert track arrangement would allow for some ping pong of cars. Cars be worked from this end, and then cars work from this end, and maybe a transfer between the two. It could be interesting. Could be interesting in a Fremo setup, in a non-my basement setup. All the track work on the foam is very hastily installed. I didn't tune up the turnouts at all. I didn't paint the foam. I probably never will. Glued a simple 1x2 to the front edge to give it some stiffness, which worked pretty well. And because it's a temporary track arrangement, that's all that will happen. Let's give us a little nudge to make sure we're coupled there. Let's go back to these Jeeps. And we're just going to put the 2 tank cars together. And then I'll run a train from this yard and deliver the extra cars to the extra car spots there in the whatever town that would be. This is probably good enough. try and move at speed step 1 until we get some movement. There we go. These Jeeps are just about at a good clearance point, so I think we'll stop them right about there. And what I'll do is I'll pull off this C&O caboose. I'll tack it onto the end of these Gertie's cars. So the Gertie's trains run eastbound, so whenever you're looking at the layout, you're facing north regardless of where you are. So to the right is always east. And because the yard track is a trailing move for eastbound trains, it makes eastbound trains an ideal candidate for switching that town. You see the red line here, so even though it's close, it's still technically in a clearance point, so we should be safe. As I said before, the C&O ran cabooses on each end of its locals. I don't know if Chesy did, but we're going to assume that they do. So I'm going to put the newer caboose, which would be the train caboose, over the road caboose if you will, on that outside track. We'll take this older caboose, which would be the yard crew's caboose, keep it close to the locomotive. I'll quickly pick up these cars. And there's no need for these tags anymore. They're just for visual help anyway. So once this train is made up, it can either depart right away to distribute the cars among the town, or it can be laid over on this outside track, and that's what I'm going to do while I get the other Jeeps and gather all the hicubes together. Dwarf signal is a clearance point, so now that locomotive and train is tied up, we can focus our attention over here. I'm just going to back down, gather these 3 hicubes, and then continue to shove them and collect those 3 hicubes. So then a train is ready to move eastbound. Or at least these Gertie cars are ready to move eastbound. Once all the other cars that are needed are attached to this train. And the way I'll decide what cars are needed in addition to these hicubes is to draw more cards. The playing cards that I use for my different industries. the Gertie one. This card would need two cards. Two cars. And it's one of those little pack for each industry. And numbers that can be changed. You know, this isn't a science experiment. Doesn't have to be exact. Sometimes if I only have an hour or so, I won't draw a whole lot of cards. And if I feel like operating all night, then I could pack as many cars as I can and try to max out all the industry tracks. Make things a little interesting. Okay, so we have a little train of hicubes, 6 cars, which turns into about 6 or 7 feet. Ready for its next assignment. What we'll do is we'll get this U-boat train, and we'll take it into town and spot the cars at all the industries. And this job is a turn, meaning it'll originate in this yard, go out, switch industries, and then come back to this yard. We'll suppose that the other end of the town is not connected to the end of Wooster, and that it has a separate staging yard or other destination tracks over that way. So I'm just going to shove these couple of tank cars back to excuse me, back to the large tank over there. And I'll also spot the box cars at this little warehouse. No need to back all the way down that track just yet. As I say, we'll put those box cars in. Push these hopper cars back to a clear point here, which we'll say is around here. Should be sufficient. Now when I couple onto these tank cars, I'll keep the couplers in the delayed position, so I can just push them to their spot at the end of the track, and then pull ahead and respot the box cars. And we can spot these cars anywhere along this track here. That should be fine. And then we can spot at least one of the box cars so it's lined up with the loading dock. So I don't think both cars would be able to fit. So that'll give us maybe 2 car lengths, possibly. I can move maybe that box car down, or